One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday. This is the best day of the week, and not just because the weekend is almost here. This is the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show. My name is Jim Lakely. I'm Executive Vice President of the Heartland Institute and your host. Heartland is an organization that has been around for 41 years, and we are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland and this show bring you the data, the science, the truth to counter the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every single day of your life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will bring friends to view this live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And also like, share, and subscribe, and leave your comments underneath the video. All of these very easy to do things help convince YouTube's algorithm to smile upon this program. And that gets it in front of even more people. Oh, and as a reminder, big tech and the legacy media are not very appreciative of the way that we cover climate and energy on this program. So Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. So if you want to help this program, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. And you can join other friends of this program who help support it so that it comes to the world every single week. And we also want to thank our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, What's Up With That, the CO2 Coalition, and Heartland UK Europe. We have an enormous show today, so much to pack in, so let's get started today. We have with us, as usual, Anthony Watts. He's a senior fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change. Well, what's up with that? We have Sterling Burnett. He's the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center on Climate and Environment Policy at the Heartland Institute. And of course, Linnea Lueken, research fellow for energy and environment policy at Heartland. And Andy Singer is our wonderful producer behind the curtain, making sure all of this looks and flows great. And we are so happy to welcome back to the program Joe Bastardi, Big Joe Bastardi. He's the chief forecaster at WeatherBELL, world famous hurricane guy, and a very passionate weather geek. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Well, it's great to be back. It's always an honor to be on with you folks. Anytime I do anything with Heartland, you can tell I'm smiling over here. Just puts a lot of joy in my heart. So I appreciate you guys. Let me hang out with you for a while.
Great. It is our pleasure again to have you back. And, we want to talk about the hurricane season, which we're going to get to here very soon in this program. But without further ado, let's start as we always do with the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Andy. Yes. Thank you very much, Bill Nye. And so another climate nut turns out to be an arsonist. Andy, there's slide 3 on our slideshow today. If you want to put that up on the screen, Anthony Watts shared this with us this week. There it is. Yeah, what you think? What you think climate change looks like, and what climate change actually looks like. This poor soul. So you probably all heard about this week. The horrible Palisades fire. An arrest was made this week. Let me fill in some of the details for you in case you're not familiar. This comes directly from our United States Department of Justice. On the evening of December 31st, 2024, Rinderknecht was working as an Uber driver. 2 passengers that he drove on separate trips between 10:15 p.m. and 11:15 p.m. That night later told law enforcement that they remembered Rinderknecht appeared agitated and angry. After dropping off a passenger in Pacific Palisades, Rinderknecht, who once lived in that neighborhood, drove towards Skull Rock Trailhead, parked his car, attempted to contact a former friend, and walked up the trail. He then used his iPhone to take videos at a nearby hilltop area and listen to a rap song to which he had listened repeatedly in the previous days and whose music video included things being lit on fire. At 12:12 a.m. on January 1st, 2025, environmental sensing platforms indicated the Lockman fire had begun. During the next few minutes, Rinderknecht called 911 several times but didn't get through because his iPhone was out of cell phone range. Rinderknecht then fled in his car, passing fire engines driving in the opposite direction. He then turned around and followed the fire engines back to the scene, driving at a high rate of speed. Rinderknecht walked up the same trail from earlier that night to watch the fire and the firefighters. Geolocation data from Rinderknecht's iPhone carrier showed that he was standing in a clearing 30 feet away from the fire as it rapidly grew. Now, this fellow is apparently also, he was going to have another story we're going to put up on the screen here from Breitbart. The alleged arsonist was also apparently indoctrinated into climate alarmism and also hated Donald Trump. What a shock. Read a little bit from here. An exclusive report for the New York Post probed Rinderknecht's social media posts showing he allegedly ranted on Facebook about a coming eco-apocalypse while mocking President Trump and encouraging people to become vegans. One article he shared, quote, climate change will force a new American migration, unquote, from ProPublica, a left-wing outfit, even included a thumbnail showing wildfires raging across a California hillside neighborhood. And that 2020 story opened by discussing West Coast temperatures. I bring all of this up, and I thank you for your patience. I think it's important to get all of that background. But when this fire broke out in January of this year and devastated and destroyed Pacific Palisades, everybody was quick. I should say everybody on the left was very quick to blame climate change for this. Slide 4, if you would, Andy, on the slideshow shows examples of the headlines that we saw back then, and that climate change had created all of these things. So, Linnea, I want to start with you. As I mentioned, Governor Gavin Newsom in California blamed climate change for this. Bernie Sanders blamed climate change for this. And as you can see, many publications blame climate change for this, but it was instead one left-wing climate alarmist nut job with a mental issue that caused billions in damage, destroyed neighborhoods probably forever, and killed dozens of people.
Well, sure. I mean, I think that the smarter people on the other side of this issue wouldn't say that climate change was the spark for the fire, but they would argue that the unseasonably dry winter that led up to it was caused by climate change, which is false. It was unseasonably dry this past October, or last year's October through December, January, which is California's kind of like wet season in that part of the country. But and it was unusually dry. Things were dried out, but it's happened before. It wasn't unusual. What ended up happening was this guy set a fire on the very same day that the perfect conditions for spreading a very severe wildfire were in place. They had a bad, what they call the Santa Ana winds that were kicking up. They had, a week or so without rain. So things were kind of dried out. And even if the entire season hadn't been less precipitation than they normally would get, even 1 week is plenty enough. Even just a couple days is plenty enough without rain to dry out the kind of scrubby grasses and stuff that they have there. So to blame this on long-term climate change is bunk. But I would say that I don't think that anybody thinks that the fire origin points are caused by climate change. But the spread of it, they'll try to claim is.
There are a lot of other factors that went in. First off, you got to remember California is mostly desert. People live there where they didn't live in the numbers historically. It was one of the least populated regions in the entire country at European landfall because there wasn't water. So we've made the desert bloom like a rose with dams across west. That region had a couple of really good high moisture years previously, which meant a lot of brush grew up, was not managed well, was not maintained, because California doesn't like to maintain things. They like to let nature take its course. So when it did dry out, when the rain stopped and the weather came back to its norm, hot and dry for a desert, and dried out the vegetation, it was ripe for catching fire real quickly. And with the Santa Ana winds, those drive wildfires. It's in the first time Santa Ana winds have driven wildfires. It just happened to be in LA this time. So, you know, a lot of factors, none of which have to do with climate change. And what's interesting, you know, not interesting, sad here, A, he was a Democrat, a liberal radical Democrat. B, he was a climate alarmist, and yet he was the cause. And C, he's a vegan, so he's supposed to love animals. I wonder how many thousands of animals died as a result of his vile act. You know, and you know, I'm sure some deer died, you know, maybe some mountain lions, but also just lots of maybe endangered jumping mice that couldn't get away from the flames. Things that they've been trying to protect in California. He's out there destroying them while he's saying, "Oh, don't eat meat. That's cruel."
Yeah,
You know,
it's interesting.
burning animals alive is cruel.
I put something on CFAC after, you know, some of this stuff is like shooting fish in a barrel. I simply got the 8 biggest California wildfires in the last 50 years and showed the 500 millibar patterns. Every single one of them is a big upper air high sitting over Washington State and creates the easterly flow. Easterly flow is evident till 10, 15,000 feet, and it comes down off the mountains and produces a Santa Ana. And they do this stuff all the time. So it's unbelievable. You got to give them one thing: they're relentless.
Yeah, well, as a former California resident, I can tell you that looking at the news media over the past 10 years, every time there's any kind of a weather event or a fire event, whether it's too dry, too wet, too much snow, too little snow, whatever it is, the media in California in particular immediately rushes to blame climate change. And without exception, they are wrong every time. And but that doesn't stop them from continuing to do it. They don't learn one damn thing.
Well, I think they do. I think they do, Anthony. They just lie. You know, you guys, especially over the past 5 to 7 years, have seen me link. You know, I think there's you know, a spiritual aspect to this of a lot of evil. That people aren't evil, but there's some kind of evil going around today that makes it acceptable to just lie because you believe you have a greater truth than the person next to you. So I just think they lie. They can't be that ignorant. I mean, I just wrote something about the Pope blessing a 22,000-year-old piece of Greenland ice. I was very upset about that because that poor piece of Greenland ice, it lived there for 22,000 years, and someone took that ice and brought it to Rome. Ice has feelings too, and I'm not talking about the ice.
Oh no, ice has feelings too. All right, I'm signing off. Bye.
You know, we commented on that last week, and
I'm sorry, I was
some people said, oh well, you know, the popes bless these things all the time. It's like, look, I think that's ridiculous. They're not ensouled. They don't need blessings. God created them. That's like taking a bucket of sand from the Sahara and saying, I bless this bucket of sand.
I wrote a thing on CFAC, a blog on CFAC. You know, I'm a big fan of William F. Buckley, and you know, he always talks about when the popes get 1 foot in the city of God and 1 foot in the city of man, they're going to get ripped apart. So I didn't mean to get us over to the Pope over here. So Jim, take back over again. This is what happens when I'm on. No, everything just becomes chaotic.
But you're right about this, though, Joe. Evil is out there. There's a lot of it,
Yeah.
And the lying, the noble lie goes back at least to Plato. He described it well. Yeah. People who think that they know what's best for the world, they have special insight. And I look at that guy, and I don't see someone who has special insight. But they think they have special insight. So it's okay for them to do evil things and lie and tell you that it's for your own good.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
All right. Let's move on here. We're going to go to item number 2, and this we came across this week. Actually, I found it on X. This is a story from Bloomberg News with the headline I couldn't resist. Headline is "A Chart Climate Denialists Can't Ignore." All right. Well, we reject that characterization, but not the challenge. All right. He writes this, and the author of this is an opinion writer who concentrates on climate issues as an opinion writer, I guess. He writes, "Every now and then you come across a piece of evidence that feels strong enough to cut through the noise and change minds. Zeke Housefather, a climate scientist at Berkeley Earth, recently produced a stark illustration of just how quickly the planet is heating up as a result of the greenhouse gases humans pump into the atmosphere. It's a chart published in his Substack newsletter, The Climate Brink, breaking down the percentage of the world's land that has experienced its hottest month on record in each decade since the 1870s. That's quite the claim. It reveals that very little of our land surface experienced such records before the 20th century. In contrast, roughly 78% of its temperature records in the 21st century and 38% of records in the 2020s, despite the fact that the decade is only halfway done." He writes, "Once more, with fewer numbers, the world is getting hotter and fast." And I think the one, it might be the chart above that one, and he shows, and then he shows that one right there. So that's fine, Andy. We had a response to this. I figured that we must have a response to this at our Climate Realism website, and Anthony Watts did one. He has a post today, just posted this morning, says, "No, Bloomberg, one chart does not prove the world is getting hot fast." Okay, Anthony, challenge accepted. Walk us through.
Well, they've got one graph that we can't deny, supposedly. I have 3. So let's take a look. Let's scroll down a little bit, Andy. Let's go to the first graph. Scroll down. Keep going. There it is. Okay. So this is the annual heat wave index in the United States, and this is extracted from NOAA USHCN data. It was compiled by the EPA, and our World in Data also took that same data and put it together. And the bottom line is that in terms of heat waves in the United States, well, all of that occurred during the Dust Bowl period of the 1930s. And we are not seeing an increase in heat waves, which basically translates to a lack of new records and so forth too. We're not seeing a whole lot of new records presently, although that graph that they showed might be factually accurate. But what's missing from it, and let's go back to their original graph, Andy, scroll back up. The graph that they presented shows this, hockey stick-like jump. Go back up, Andy, that's the blue one. There we go, that one there. So, it's just like man's hockey stick. And so what's going on here? Well, yes, there are new climate records being set, but are they real? No. We've got so much bias associated with station siting that I've proven. Over 90% of all the weather stations operated by NOAA in the United States are biased and cited improperly. They are biased to the warm side. So when they're biased to the warm side, no surprise that they're going to set new records. The second thing going on is UHI. There's a tremendous increase in UHI throughout not just the United States, but the world. And we see so many more weather stations in cities than we do in rural communities. For example, the majority of city temperature measurement stations are at airports. They're out in the middle of the tarmac and the asphalt, and aviation has grown. There's more waste heat. There's more asphalt. There's more tarmac. There's more terminals. All this stuff contributes to higher temperature records. So, yeah, there's that data, and it may be plotted accurately, but is it really representative of climate? No, not at all. Now, let's go further down, Andy, to the second graph after the first one. Not that one, the next one. There it is. Now, this is the U.S. Climate Reference Network. This is a pristine set of temperature stations that are sited away from human influence. I've visited a number of these. Not that one. It's the other one. Thank you. This is a record of the high temperatures recorded by the USCRN in the United States. It's a network of 114 stations that are state-of-the-art and pristinely sited. Where's the big increase? Not there. Gosh, why? Well, because It's away from the human influence. It's away from the UHI. It's away from the badly cited situations. It's not there. That is representative of climate, not their graph. And now the final graph, and this one is from our friend Chris March. This graph also uses UHHCN data, and there it is right there. And it shows the number of days above 95 degrees, 100 degrees, or 105 degrees in the United States. Now, if in fact we were getting hot fast, like they say in the headlines, we would not see a flat line like that. I mean, look at the days above 105. That's flat. The days above 100, also pretty much flat. Yeah, there's some little spikes in there. But again, the biggest spikes for all of these hot days back in the 1930s. So 3 graphs to theirs, we win.
Well, and if you drew a trend line, I suspect across that, what you'd find is a declining trend. I mean, look at where the spikes are. It's the 30s, maybe the 50s. It's too small for me to see them all, but all these temperatures here, in the past are higher than they are right now.
Right, but they wouldn't draw a trend line for that because that's inconvenient.
Yeah.
Well, there is more water vapor in the air, so a lot of the warming is from nighttime lows also, which would go with the UHI. I mean, here, if you're going to increase the dew point of the atmosphere, it effectively puts a cap on how low the temperature could go. But it also means that you get cloud development quicker. And it's a sign that the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere are certainly not warming up that fast, because if they were warming, if they were warming, we'd be able to get the hotter temperatures, but they're not. So you get a lot of cloud formation, you get more rain, you get more precipitation, and the range, it's actually opposite of what they say. The range in temperatures from nighttime lows to daytime highs has actually been decreasing. So you might have a higher mean temperature. And what they love to do is, as our good friend Chris March says, he said several times, I used to say it also, 60 degrees is not hot. 59 is not hot. They go, hottest ever. It was 59.4. And I'm like, who goes swimming at 59.4? So it's another one. And Coach Cale Sanderson here at Penn State has a saying, so what? Right? Something happens and he goes, well, so what? Like, if it's this hot, look where human beings are today. Look at the progress man has made. So if it's 59.4 instead of 59.2 or whatever the heck it's supposed to be, so what?
Yeah, but that's the problem with the climate alarmism media. They look at these highly magnified, wiggles in temperature. They look at these anomalies between 59.4 and 59.8, and they amplify that into graphs that shoot up.
What's funny is our success as a planetary species. For instance, we have air conditioning. You're a Washington Post writer. You go into work at 7:30, it's 74, 75 degrees, dew point 69, and all right, you're in an air conditioning office all day. You come out, it's 92 over 74. You go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable how hot it is, right? Same person working in the 1950s with no air conditioning, right? Yep. It's so what? So a lot of this is because we acclimate ourselves to the nice, cooler conditions in our buildings that fossil fuels have helped produce. And then we come out and start screaming about how hot it is. I have climate anxiety. I can't stand it. I'm going to get in my car. The windows that weren't even rolled down. It's just a terrible, terrible burden that we all have to continue to bear as human beings because of 0.2 or 3 Celsius warmer than what it was 15 years ago or whatever. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing.
Indeed. All right. Well, good commentary and good debunking of that, Anthony Watts. And you can go to climaterealism.com. That's our website that has stories just like that every single week that debunk what you see in the mainstream media with actual facts and not alarmism. All right, let's go to our next story. Are inhalers causing climate change? This comes from CBS News. Headline: Inhalers produce as much carbon emissions as over 500,000 cars each year. Study finds. I'll read from it here. I'll read it here for you guys. Inhalers that provide fast-acting treatment for people with certain respiratory conditions and are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, which can worsen both climate change and the conditions themselves, according to new research. In the study, published Monday in the Journal of the American Medical Association, researchers found inhalers approved for asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, generated an estimated 24.9 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent emissions in the United States from 2014 to 2024. This is the equivalent to the emissions of about 530,000 gas-powered cars each year, according to the study. Quote, scaled across tens of millions of inhalers dispensed annually, these emissions drive global warming, exacerbating the very respiratory conditions inhalers are meant to relieve. Authors of a supplemental editorial note of the findings. 28 million Americans have asthma and 34 million have chronic lung disease, according to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. These cases are expected to grow as climate change makes air pollution worse, increasing the risk and severity of symptoms. Now, Sterling Burnett, you picked out this story for the show today, and you think this is not just silly, but maybe a little bit evil. Explain.
Well, the group doesn't call itself this, but I think they should call themselves Doctors for Population Decline, because they want to kill people. I'm sorry, there's no evidence whatsoever that higher CO2 emissions are making people sick. But there's a lot of evidence that if you take away their inhalers, or if you make them less effective, people will die from asthma and COPD. They have to breathe. I'm sorry, they made these inhalers worse a few years ago when they took out the CFCs that used to power them. They made them less effective, all to fight the ozone hole. So let's kill a few people to fight the ozone hole. Let's kill a lot more to fight climate change. That's what these doctors are saying. Let's not use these things. And the claim that these things are causing climate change, first off, you can't show that automobiles are causing climate change. You can't show that one small segment, proportional. I think Anthony did the calculation. There's 1.6 billion cars or so on Earth. This amounts to 500,000 emissions for 500,000 cars. So it's a minuscule percentage, and cars are a percentage of the CO2 emissions overall. It's a ridiculous and dangerous editorial. I say again, editorial. It's not a study. And the opinions of these doctors, they're dangerous. I wouldn't want them near anyone I loved treating them for illness. If they think climate change is more dangerous than going without an inhaler.
Yeah, the inhalers, the exhalers are the ones that are causing the problems. We exhale 100 times more. I just stole that from one of the people that just chatted in. I saw what he said. He's exactly right. It's our lungs hold all that CO2. So here's what you got to do. You got to try to hold your breath 30 to 45 seconds out of every minute, starting now.
Well, you're right about one thing, Joe. The exhalers that are dangerous are the ones that wrote this editorial, and the ones that allowed it to be published.
Hey, we finally found a way to get Joe Bastardi to stop talking. Hey, this is a great study. Anthony?
What?
I kid. All right, Anthony, you wanted to jump in here?
Yeah, I did. I mean, this really boils down to simple mathematics, and I put together the math. I did the math. Here it is. As of January 2025, estimates from Hedges and Company put the total number of vehicles in the world at about 1.644 billion. Other sources say 1.5 billion. So we'll use 1.644. Divide that by 500,000, the total number of cars that supposedly these inhalers make emissions equivalent to. We do that division, and we get that tiny number of 0.000304136. Multiply that times 100 to get the percentage, and ta-da! 500,000 cars, or the equivalent of the inhaler's impact, represent 0.03%, 0.03% of the number of cars on Earth. And of course, if we remove inhalers, that'll make a huge difference.
Yep.
It just
even if you believed every molecule of CO2 was driving warmer temperatures, which I don't think we can say honestly.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And there was just a part of this. We'll move on to the next one, but there was a part of the story that there's this conflating of carbon dioxide emissions with air pollution. That's why people need these inhalers, because of air pollution. Well, carbon dioxide is not air pollution. They're talking, you need an inhaler if you have asthma and other chronic lung diseases, not because there is a slight increase of CO2 in parts per million over the last 5 years. That's not why you have asthma or COPD, and it's not air pollution. So,
well, but even air pollution is not necessarily the cause of asthma.
Right. Well, sure.
A lot of allergies and COPD, a lot of them come from smokers, but a lot of them come from allergens in the air. We don't typically think of pollen as air pollution because it's not emitted by humans, but that causes a lot of, or dander from pets, from animals.
100%. All right, we have a lot to get through here. I do want to get to our main story here, but we have one extra crazy climate news of the week, and this is actually a kind of a check-in on a prediction. Strong tornadoes are still rare, apparently, when we were told they wouldn't be. Anthony Watts had decided, or thought we might want to talk about this week. This is from CNN. The first EF5 tornado to strike the U.S. in over a decade was just confirmed by experts. I'll read a bit from it. A rare, monstrous EF5 tornado that struck the United States more than 3 months ago was the first of its kind in more than a decade. A tornado that roared through parts of eastern North Dakota in June and killed 3 people was upgraded Monday to an EF5 with winds greater than 210 miles per hour. The National Weather Service in Grand Forks, North Dakota confirmed. EF5 tornadoes pack winds of at least 201 miles per hour and are the highest level of the enhanced Fujita scale, the scale used to determine tornado strength. Tornadoes this strong are rare. Only 60 tornadoes of EF5 strength, including this one, have been recorded since 1950. Despite the rarity of such a monster, the fact that there hadn't been an EF5 tornado in more than a decade didn't sit right with some scientists. A study released in August dove into this so-called EF5 tornado drought and posited the lack of these high-end ratings had more to do with potentially imbalanced damage to the rating scale than the power of the twisters themselves. The August study argued that adjusting the definition of an EF5 tornado down slightly to 190 miles per hour would result in an EF5 frequency that's more consistent with decades past. Well, gosh, you think you lower standards, you get more of what you want. Yeah. Now, Anthony, you mentioned here that there's some headlines were telling us pretty recently that this shouldn't have been a rare EF5 tornado. We should have had plenty of EF5 tornadoes. Time Magazine, 2014, extreme tornado outbreaks are on the rise, study says. ABC News, 2023, is Tornado Alley shifting due to climate change? Scientists explain how warming climate affects tornado activity. Washington Post, 2025, March was an active month for tornadoes again. Here's why. AccuWeather had a headline in 2025, how climate change is influencing tornadoes. Weather forecast now this year, how climate change is shaping tornado patterns in the U.S. Climate Control Journal this year, will tornadoes get worse with climate change? And finally, with Climate Cosmos, also this year, tornado trends. Is climate change creating more dangerous storms? Anthony, this seems like yet another prediction in the wind.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's just amazing how much they will go for trying to link worsening weather to climate change. And every time you scratch the surface of this, and you don't have to look really hard, you don't even have to be a meteorologist to figure this stuff out. All you have to go do is look at some data and some of the headlines. And the bottom line is that the prediction about worsening tornadoes has not come true. And even the IPCC says in their AR6 report that they see no linkage between climate change and small-scale weather events like tornadoes. Just not there. And if you go to Climate at a Glance and look at our tornadoes on the United States page, you will see a graph that shows a clear downward trend. And that downward trend has been sustained for quite a while. And it's all for the stronger tornadoes, the EF3s and higher. They're just not getting worse. It's just that simple. Even though, I think back in 2005, Al Gore predicted it, and a lot of the media predicted it around 2009 to 2014. And of course, anytime there's a tornado outbreak, they immediately jump on it and say, climate change caused this. Here's the proof. Well, there is no proof. Look at that graph. There's your proof. Here's one graph that climate alarmists can deny.
They do deny it. Let me point out, you read this story, and if you look at the details of the story, it turns out that F5 tornadoes aren't that rare after all. 60 since 1950. So that's 60 over 75 years. It's not quite an F5 a year, but it's more than an F5 every 2 years by a long margin. And so what we've had here is a real F5 drought. That means that it was 59 over 65 years. That doesn't sound that rare. They're just making and they want to fix it. We don't like the fact that it's rare. So how do we fix it? Like Jim says, you lower the standards. You want more people to make it in the elite military, you lower the standards. You want more people that are unfit to make it as firefighters, you lower the standards. Well, you want more alarm, you want more climate alarm, you lower the standards for F5 tornadoes.
Joe Bastardi, welcome back. Linnea, also welcome back. It's nice to
have sorry about that.
In the middle of the show.
I had to go because normally if my dog is barking, I just ignore it because it's like the mailman or something. But she was barking in a particular way that the last time I heard her bark like that was when my neighbor's dog was in my yard killing my chickens. Oh. So I had to go look. There was nothing. It was, of course, nothing, but she was extremely upset.
Oh, good. The chickens are safe for now. All right. Joe Bastardi, do you want to say anything about this tornado story we've been talking about right now?
Well, I'm speechless because they do this all the time. It's the same thing. Like, where the heck did the data come in for Hurricane Audrey, which was a Category 4 hurricane in June, and then all of a sudden, 75 years later, we found out it was a Category 3 hurricane. So they adjust stuff. We just had a record, by the way. They named the storm at 45 degrees north in the North Atlantic. And the climate alarmists are going to say this is a hurricane, a tropical storm, a subtropical storm. They're going to say, look at that, 45 degrees north. The darn water temperature there is 60 degrees. So they do this stuff. And, I have all this theory about what you see in the weather and climate is what goes on behind the scenes in a bunch of things today. That, this whole authoritarian thing and we have the official idea. I don't care if it's ClimateGate or I shouldn't say ClimateGate, Russiagate or whatever gate it is, Hunter Biden's laptop. There's always some kind of manipulation going on. And the key to propaganda, folks, is always telling an element of the truth, but making sure the entire picture is hidden, right? So you just dwell on the one thing that might be true or might not be true. I got to tell you something. A lot of this stuff I actually laugh at it today, but the problem is they're not going away, these people. And if you get a situation where the politics of the country turn again, they're coming full blast again with all this stuff. But in the meantime, a lot of this is quite amusing to me.
Right. Well, that's why we call it Crazy Climate News of the Week, Joe.
It is. It's like you put this stuff on Gutfeld show, Crazy Climate News. I'm just serious. It is nuts.
Yep. All right. Well, that does it for that. We're going to get into our main topic today, and which is why we have renowned hurricane expert Joe Bastardi on with us today. But before we get into that, I want to make an announcement here that the Heartland Institute has a second edition of our best-selling Climate at a Glance book. Little shameless plug here. you can go, maybe Andy can bring it up on screen. There's an Amazon page for it. And it was today, Anthony Watts has been hitting refresh on the Amazon page all day. And we saw that we were number one in the climatology category as of this morning. So among all books in the climate category, Climate at a Glance, second edition, 40 facts on prominent climate topics is number one. It's one of the number one new releases, and it's number one in climate. It is, if you actually, what's fun is if you go to the page, you can see that our book is right there next to a book of one Michael Mann. And he, I am certain, Michael Mann, is also refreshing his Amazon page over and over and over again, because he just released that book last week. And it must burn him and make his brain hurt to see our book right there next to his. So,
and above his in many categories.
Yep, there it is. Yep, see, there it is. You can get to Climate at a Glance, 40 prominent topics at Amazon.com. It's actually, what is it now? If you scroll in, actually, I'll scroll in and see it myself. What is that right there? Where's its ranking? Yeah, number 3 in weather books, number 4 in earth science, and number 6 in climatology today.
Look at the top. Underneath the title, it says that's the most updated usually.
Yep, number 1 new release. So
number 1 new release.
Congratulations. Yeah, we've been working on this book, an update for this book for a while, and not in small part thanks to the feedback we get from this show and from the people in the chat, that it was time to make sure that we had the latest data on all of those climate topics that we bring up on this show. Anthony and Sterling, congratulations. James Taylor, our president, was also a contributor to this book. So you can get that now. And I would actually encourage, when you get that book, when you order this book at the very, very affordable price of $14 or so, leave a review, leave a 5-star review. If you buy the book and leave a review, that is a super good thing. So encourage you to do that. Thanks for supporting us and the program and the book.
Yeah, and I would like to add that when you get the book, on the inside cover, there is a QR code where you can scan your phone, and it'll send you to a link where you can download a free digital PDF copy of the book. And then you can proceed to email that copy to all the people that think you're crazy for doubting climate change.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what that's like to be pushing the button when I release the weaponization of weather. The Saturday morning that after I released, I guess I was on Tucker Carlson's show on a Friday night or something like that. It was number 23 in the world, one behind Michelle Obama's book. And I kept pushing the button to see, please, God, just let me get like one ranking above Michelle Obama. But it was not to be.
Well, you can always dream.
Yep. Should have had you on the show to help promote it. You would have made it. You would have made it with our help, Joe. All right.
I actually am writing another. I keep trying to start to write another book, not about climate. It's called For the Love of the Weather, or Thank God for the Weather, or something like that. But it's like that. Senator Kennedy, the guy from Louisiana, has the book out and stuff. That's how it's going to be. It's going to be all funny stories, or all the stories are going to be true. Some are going to be bizarre about all the different things I've encountered in this journey that God's blessed me with. It's just, I sometimes I think about it, I go, how wild is this? A geek. I've been a geek since I'm a little kid, and look what actually happened. It was pretty cool.
That's great. All right. So go to Amazon.com, Climate at a Glance, second edition, 40 facts. You will not regret it. It's a very good book. Very easy to read, and actually a very good reference manual as well for any argument you may get into with friends or family over the holidays on climate. All right, let's get to our main topic for today, and that is the hurricane season. We've been hinting at doing this for quite a while now. And it's about time, because we've been running. Well, maybe when a big hurricane hits the United States, we'll bring on somebody like Joe or our friend Stan Goldenberg to come on, 2 of our favorite hurricane experts. Stan couldn't make it this week. Not that you were second choice, Joe. I'm just saying we were going to have both of you on again, but we thought it's time to go over the hurricane season, because you can bring up the Wikipedia page. This is Andy, please. This is, I suppose, the one time we can trust Wikipedia. They do have an easy to follow summary of the 2025 hurricane season. and just two storms formed in September, Gabrielle and Umberto. Neither made landfall in the United States. And in fact, September was the first hurricane-free September for hurricane landfall in the United States in 10 years. There are many forecasting organizations, and the predictions of hurricanes this year ranges from 10 to 18 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 2 to 5 major storms. So far this year, according to the Wikipedia page here, and I have no reason to doubt it, it's just simple adding up, we've had 10 named storms, 4 hurricanes, and 3 big ones. So, Joe, you are the world's foremost hurricane historian. But before we get into the past, what's happening in the present? Why the heck haven't we had a hurricane hit the United States yet?
Well, first of all, this numbers game, I think, is a joke that we play every year with how many storms there are going to be and all this. Most of them, even the worst years, more storms are out in the middle of the Atlantic than they are hitting the United States. And it's just an exercise in how many bunch of theologians, how many angels you can stick on the head of a needle. I don't like playing that game as far as numbers go. I have to play it because everybody wants a forecast. We had 14 to 18. We had 5 to 9 hurricanes or whatever. I forget what it was. I actually had a smaller range because 10 to 18 storms. I mean, come on. Like, it was like Michael Mann one year had 23 to 41 or whatever the heck he had. I'm like, you can't make a range that big, So, but what we've always pioneered at WeatherBELL is impact. December 7, 2023, put out Hurricane Season from Hell, had the red zone, and you saw where all those tracks went. This year, we felt it was going to be the Central Gulf out into the Atlantic near Bermuda. That's where we had our red zone. And what's going on so far is it's probably shifted east, that red zone, that area where we're seeing the highest amount of ACE. It's about 400 to 500 miles to the east of where we put the red zone. So we had 4 to 6 impact, what we call impact storms, 2 or 3 of them hurricanes, 1 or 2 major. So obviously that forecast is overdone. The problem is the Madden-Julian oscillation is rotating into phases 2 and 3 here over the next 10 to 15 days, and you still have the opportunity of these late season storms. I tell people all the time, look at 1985 when you had Hurricane Juan hit Louisiana the last week of October, and then Kate came in and hit Florida November 15th and 16th. So I suspect we're going to get some kind of development pretty far west in the Caribbean before this is all said and done that may come up and take a swipe at the southeast part of the United States. But look, the overall, what you're seeing in the Atlantic, the chickens coming home to roost, all right? And I've been trying to get the attention of the weather and climate community for 20 years about what's been going on in the Western Pacific. The Western Pacific Basin, which is home to 60% of the Northern Hemisphere ACE index, has only had 2 years out of the last 20 above normal. Everything is collapsed in the Western Pacific. And that is very, very important because if you're going to play the climate game with this kind of thing, you don't just look at the Atlantic. The Atlantic is a very small ocean compared to the entirety of the Pacific. So what we've seen this year is, again, the Western Pacific is down. A lot of the way the atmosphere is trying to balance that out is in the Eastern Pacific, where the ACE index is actually a bit above normal. Then we go into the Atlantic, and the Atlantic's a bit below normal. But you get a late season storm like a Mitch, or what was it? What was the hurricane in? I guess it was 1931 in the Caribbean, which broke the ACE record in, I guess it was in November. It was an unbelievable storm. How strong that storm was so long. Then all of a sudden you're seeing it's above average as far as that goes. But the numbers, this number every year, it's a red herring. What do you care if there's 20 storms and none of them hit the United States? Or this year, we just had our 11th storm named this morning. Unbelievable. They're naming storms at 45 degrees north where the sea surface temperatures are 60 degrees. Now, it looks like a tropical storm because it is a warm core system within a cold atmosphere. In other words, the atmosphere that is in the North Atlantic It does have a warm core where that system is, but it's only warm relative to how cold the North Atlantic is. So where are we going to start drawing the line with stuff like this? In the meantime, well, just a second. In the meantime, 2.5 weeks ago, we had a storm come from water that was 83 degrees off the North Carolina coast, go drop some houses into the ocean in North Carolina, went into Virginia Beach with an eye, and no one names it. So, the inconsistencies are tough. What do I tell my clients? You got a horse with no name here, but it's still stampeding over your beaches. So yeah, it's an interesting situation with that.
I think they're cheating on the 11th one. And the reason I say that is this. Typically, you don't name a storm until it's a tropical storm. You don't name tropical depressions, you give them numbers. You don't name subtropical storms, you give them numbers.
Well, no, they've done that
now
before.
They're naming a subtropical storm as if it's a tropical storm.
No, they've named subtropical. My problem with it is it's not anywhere near water that is objectively warm enough to support what we have always used for tropical storms. So, and by the way, there's been a couple, Tom Downs at WeatherBELL and we call them ham sandwiches. These mysterious storms that get named out in the middle of nowhere, and you're looking, it's a strato-Q swirl out there or whatever. And it's true, the core is probably warmer relative to the atmosphere around it. Look, the great President's Day blizzard of 1979, not the 78, not the New England blizzard, the 79 blizzard, right? Have you ever seen the picture of that perfectly formed eye about 50 miles southeast of Atlantic City? It was a warm core system within the very cold air around it. We've seen some of these things, these eye features, form over Lake Superior and Lake Michigan with snow squall outbreaks come down. So I agree with you that it should not have been named, but it's simply because of the criteria that the water's so darn cold out there. You get storms like that all the time out there, But let me ask you this. Why would they name that and not name the storm? Charles Rotter just I'm not very inclusive. Charles Rotter just texted me, I'm not very inclusive. Stop distracting me, Charles. But why do you name that storm, but one that's actually causing houses to fall into the water with an eye-like feature in the middle of the hurricane season, that doesn't get named? I'll tell you why it didn't get named, because no one hatched it a few days before. That's how cynical I am. If they don't have
lion, dog-faced pony soldier,
they're not going to name it. But overall, I've been trying to tell people this numbers game is ridiculous. It's where they go, how much they impact, who they impact. That's what we're concerned with at WeatherBELL. And we have clients in the Bahamas, we have clients all over the place. And part of the reason you're seeing this, by the way, is the warming that has taken place is influencing the Indian monsoon. And whenever the Indian monsoon is further north than normal, like we saw it this year, all right, we had no early season cyclone activity in the Arabian or Indian Ocean, I should say. Okay, when that happens, the African wave train is displaced too far north. It's more diffuse. And Willie Soon and the Connollys have been talking about what's going on with the Hadley cell. The Hadley cell has been weaker than normal. So what we're seeing, folks, is a spreading out of the entire energy picture. We're not seeing the incubation of energy in the deep tropics anymore. You understand that? So what the climate people don't understand is two things. One, if you're going to talk globally about it, let's talk globally. Well, why are you avoiding the Western Pacific, which is home to most of the ACE? Secondly, even though if it's warmer, there may be more total energy, but if the energy is spread out, right? If it's spread out, what happens? What's the impact on the tropics? Well, think about this. If it is warmed more in the North Atlantic and North Pacific than it has in the tropics, right? What does that do to the vertical velocities? Think about if it's warmer to the north and it hasn't warmed up as much further south, well, the vertical velocities are weaker. And that's why you're seeing the increase in outgoing long wave radiation in the Central Pacific and in the tropical Atlantic, because we have less cloudiness in there. We have less cloudiness, so you're getting storms to develop, a lot of them, further north, and they're much more compact than what they used to be. The big monsters that when you come across, I mean, if we had the 1944 or 38 hurricane today, these people would be going out of their minds. They have no idea. You know, you get a storm like Helene, which was big, or Erin, which was big, and they, oh my gosh, look at this. Those storms used to be relatively commonplace back in a colder time because where they developed, they could focus the energy better rather than having to develop further north like we've been seeing. You know, a lot of the hurricanes that hit the United States are not even hurricanes 3 days before. They rapidly intensify because they're very compact relative to the big storms that we saw before.
Yeah, well, we have Anthony. You just pulled a Jim.
I know. I'm sorry. I had ear problems. I think the thing to talk about here is the fact that the climate change is killing the Hadley cell. Let's make that the big banner thing now, right?
Well, that's interesting, Anthony, that you bring that up because what's happening is, look, none of us deny that the climate changes. They are living on analogs. Okay, I'm looking at this hurricane season. I said, Joe, for the last 10 years on blogs, you've been talking about what's going on in the Pacific. You knew that it had to try to come to the Atlantic because the atmosphere is always trying to balance out, and yet you missed it. And see, I'm very good. I believe I have a lot of talent that when I'm corrected, I generally absorb the punishment and then I don't get fooled again, right? But what bothers me about some of the things that have happened to me in forecasting is I knew in the back of my head to watch for something like that. And yet I didn't hit it when it came along. But what has happened is that distortion of warming has to affect the global wind oscillation, the sea level pressures across the globe. And that in turn is affecting the amount of convergence that we have in the tropics. You're spread out. It's still warm. There's still upward motion, but it's not focused in the main development region. You notice what's been going on also, that the hurricane seasons are no longer, well, let's just go up to September 11th and come down after that. They're convoluted. The two big storms last year came, or two of the big storms last year, we shut down for a while and then we came back up late. And the reason that's happening is because when the atmosphere begins to cool, like in the autumn season, and the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere is still warm, what you're doing is you're actually getting a mechanism to try to focus the heat. And I'll tell you where it's really having a big impact. And a lot of folks that follow me know I've turned into a Mann-Julian oscillation fanatic. And I've used that religiously to try to help out, pick out periods where I thought things would be active. And a lot of other hurricane forecasters do that, certainly also. It's impacting things because there's both destructive and constructive interference of the Mann-Julian oscillation. And when that starts happening, you're going, well, what the heck? You can't, the computer models that are looking at the Mann-Julian oscillation, they can't see what it's going to do until it actually starts doing it. And given its importance into the input in the hemispheric weather pattern, hurricanes and wintertime, you know that the same phases that are favorable for late season tropical development in the Atlantic basin are the same phases that they come back around 40 to 50 days later are favorable for cold outbreaks in the eastern part of the United States, phase 8 and 1 of the Mann-Julian.
Of course. So Joe, basically, you know, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to say that climate change is affecting the Coriolis forest, right? No, but we got to get to questions. So let's go to that.
Yeah, we got to get to the Q&A. Before we get to that, excellent.
I'll go drum roll.
Yes, before we get to that, we need to thank our sponsor, the sponsor of this fine program, and that is Advisor Metals. If you listen to a lot of conservative channels on YouTube and other streaming services, you hear tons of pitches to buy gold, silver, and other precious metals. There are a ton of companies out there, but we want to tell you why you should trust our sponsor, Advisor Metals. It's the man who runs the company, and his name is Ira Bershadsky. He's the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he does not employ high-pressure tactics or deceptive marketing ploys like many in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you're dealing in quality bullion, and that's so much better when it comes time to liquidate this very valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you will have your investment sent discreetly directly to your own home. And I must note that Ira is advertising on this program because he is an America First patriot. He does not donate to Democrats. He refuses to work with proxies of the Chinese Communist Party, and he, like us, abhor the machinations and schemes of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. We are very proud to have Advisor Metals as a sponsor. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio, if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, please go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there, and Ira or one of his team will get in contact with you and make the entire process very easy. Again, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals, and also be sure to tell them who sent you, because that helps us and this show while you're helping your financial future. Again, climaterealismshow.com/metals. All right. It is time for Q&A. Take it over, Linnea.
Those googly-eyed fiends cut me off. Okay. All right. Let's see. We've got a lot of good questions today.
You do.
I need to unstar some that were from last week that somehow popped up again, even though I unstarred them last week. Let's go. All right. I'm trying to find a good hurricane question for us. I know. Sorry, you guys. There's like a ton of questions from last week that are stuck here. All right, I'm going to pull up this one from Leechy2, who is over on Rumble, who asks, although ocean temps have gotten warmer, the air aloft has also gotten warmer, so that there's been no increase in CAPE. Is that why hurricane activity has not increased despite warmer waters?
Well, hurricane activity certainly has increased over the last 10 years. It's the Western Pacific. It's the Western Pacific that has been down, but the Atlantic, the past 10 years, this year being the exception, has been above normal. I believe 8 out of 10 of the last 10 years. But the Atlantic's a very small basin. I look more with the vertical velocity patterns, and the vertical velocity patterns. You could just take a look at the outgoing long wave radiation the last 15 years versus, let's say, the 1950s and 1960s. The outgoing long wave radiation is much greater because there's less cloudiness, and chances are the reason there's less cloudiness is less upward motion in the tropics. And the other place where you see a lot of think about, if you see a lot of cloudiness over Southeast Asia and Africa, it means that you've got more convergence over land masses. And more convergence over land masses means that the easterly winds in the tropical Pacific are stronger. We're in almost a perpetual La Nina state. And people think, well, La Nina, that means it's going to be cooler. No, all the La Nina is a resistance to the warmth. It's not actually doing much cooling, because if you look at the temperatures, I don't care if you look at Dr. Spencer's site or any other site, the temperatures are going up, and they're going up relative to the warming of the ocean. The question is, what's warming the ocean? And I could get myself in trouble with this, so I'm not going to go into that right here. But the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere have warmed some. But I mean, if we're going to look at this, we have to understand that the warming, if we're going to use the Atlantic basin as a metric for that, just go look at the hurricane seasons over the last, since the big Super Nino of 16. Most of those hurricane seasons wind up with above normal ACE, but they're developing further north, and we have more scattershot storms in the middle of nowhere in the Atlantic.
All right, thank you. Let's see. High Turbine or Hit Urbine, I'm not sure which one, says, do solar flares heat and expand the ionosphere, increasing height of the troposphere, stretching the core of hurricanes like a skater pulling their arms in, increasing velocity of wind?
Above my pay grade. Someone else. if we could
I
say-
don't know. I
Seriously,
don't know
when
the
I don't
answer to
know
that
something,
either.
when I don't know something, I say I don't know. I mean, there's so many things I don't know that I know a lot less than I do know. Put it that way. So I don't have any answer for that.
I'm not sure if anyone on this team knows the exact answer to this one, but I can give a shot at it. So Montana Joe asks, weren't the Quebec fires from last year or maybe 2 years ago started by climate wackos? So I think, there are a lot of arsonists out there. The majority of fires that end up being wildfires are caused by human beings, but it's usually not arson, like intentional arson. Usually it's someone dragging a chain behind a truck and it lights brush on the side of the road, or somebody like dumps out hot coals when they're grilling or something and it lights the field on fire. It's that kind of thing. However, I do think that if I recall, there were some arsonists involved in the Quebec fires, specifically from last year, 2 years ago.
There were some arson. There were some arsonists. There were some, like you said, most of the fires that humans set are accidental. Lit cigarette tossed, campfire gets out of control or isn't put out properly. You also get some lightning fires every year. And I'm sure that some of the fires in Canada were also set by lightning. What made them so bad was that they have had decades of fewer than normal fires, had a lot of buildup. They stopped logging entirely, almost in Canada. I mean, well, not entirely, but over large portions of Canada, it's protected. So they had a lot of fuel buildup, and then they had the one year when all the different factors came together. Drought, after multiple years of good moisture, high temperatures, and then you have the spark, whether it was arson, accident, or lightning fire.
And Chris Nisbet asks, do Americans have regulations similar to those in Australia regarding protective measures homeowners have to implement against fires? Oh, you're doing a Jim, Anthony.
Sorry, I've been dealing with the headphone problem. Some places they do, some places they don't. There's some parts of California that have wildfire rules, setback rules, that sort of thing, and other places that don't. I would say the best answer is it's a hodgepodge of rules and not particularly effective.
And some of the hodgepodge create the problems. I mean, you've got rules in California where they say you can't cut back. They want natural. They want it to look natural. Or they've got environmental. In the past, they've said you can't clear certain brush because it's protective. It's habitat for endangered mice. So, okay, we create a fire hazard by protecting the mice, which then is their habitat is completely destroyed when the fire comes along. Genius, that.
Toasting those poor little things. It is kind of funny that I said that. Okay. Alrighty. We have a request from a viewer, from Kim, who says, can you guys recruit an oceanographer for a stint to explain to the folks about the hysteria over ocean current collapse? I've been trying to get the word out. Yeah, I mean, if we can find an oceanographer who's on our side of the discussion here, we can definitely have them on. That'd be fun.
Even if they're not.
I would point out that we have had in climaterealism.com, we've had stories on all sides of that. The ocean currents are collapsing. The ocean currents are getting stronger. The ocean currents aren't changing. The bottom line is that climate science can't seem to make up their minds. And they've been doing this now for over a decade. They even had that crazy movie, The Day After Tomorrow, based on the collapse of the AMOC, and all the freeze comes in and everything else. And it was totally bogus. And even Dr. Gavin Schmidt of NASA said that it was a bad movie and not representative of science. And when he's saying that, Well, anyway,
there was the even better version of that, which was South Park's The Day Before the Day After Tomorrow. So, and there the cause was a beaver dam break, the world's largest beaver dam. But in any case, Anthony's right. It's all over the map. Some studies say it's speeding up. Some say it's declining, and then they predict different types of effects from the decline. And some say it's staying about the same. You basically get the same message about ocean currents as you get about monsoons, the Asian monsoons. Oh, they're getting worse. Oh, they're not as strong, so we're going to starve because people won't have the flooding every year they use for agriculture. And it's staying about the same. They can't, every new study comes out, it's breaking ground, and whatever is happening, it's climate change.
Yep. And related to that, I'm hearing some echo on my end. DJ Bo says, I hear from time to time that the Gulf Stream is collapsing. If it's warming, wouldn't that tend to strengthen the Gulf Stream, if anything?
Yes,
Not if
no,
it's
and
warming
maybe.
Yeah, well, if it's warming, the theory is if it's warming to the north, then once again you're impacting the normal. Listen. I once had a guy I worked with, he's a great meteorologist named Frank Brody, and he'd always say to me, anything can happen and probably will. That is what climate is about. Anything can happen and probably will over a long enough period of time. This is strengthening, that's weakening, this is going on, that's going on. And, we should be actually grateful for it because it gives us a chance to all get together with these shows every once in a while. Although all of you, congratulations, are going to get combat pay because that's a prerequisite if I'm going to be on with you. But look,
I would point out that the span of natural processes on Earth, particularly in the meteorology, are far longer, than human lifespans. And so we don't remember a lot of things or even notice lots of things, unless we go back and look at paleo data or whatever. There's lots of change that goes on in the Earth that's far extended in time compared to the human lifespan. And so we don't know a lot of things yet. We're just scratching the surface of knowledge. And so the claims that are being made today are based on incomplete data.
Well, the other problem is the claims are being made as if we have a closed determinative system, cause and effect. Raise CO2 have these effects. It's 1-to-1 correlation. It's not. We live in a chaotic universe and a chaotic climate system. We have a variety of factors that aren't modeled well, that aren't even taken into account, like cosmic rays, the solar activity, its impact on clouds, ocean currents, volcanic activity, subsurface volcanic activity. None of these are captured in climate models or captured well, which they admit typically, but they're convinced that they have nothing to do with it because we live in a determinative system where the only thing that matters is human-caused greenhouse gases. That's bunk. We live in a chaotic system.
Let me ask this question actually based on talk about the Gulf Stream. Now, my understanding is the British Isles are more temperate than their latitude would suggest because of the Gulf Stream. Do we know? And then there was the medieval warm period. We've talked about it on the show a lot. How there were vineyards. That Greenland was actually green, and that they were growing wine grapes on the British Isles. Do we know what caused the medieval warm period?
That was the Roman warm period when we had Vikings in Greenland.
Okay, but still, do we has anyone come up with an answer for why? This goes to what you were talking about, Anthony, on how weather and climate changes far extend beyond human knowledge and all of that. So do we know what caused those warming periods in the past? We know it wasn't SUVs and coal-fired power plants.
I suspect it's the same thing that's causing it now. The oceans warming the way they are set up certain patterns. If you watch every day, for instance, on WeatherBELL, we have a computer generated global temperature. All right. If you ever watch that computer generated global temperature, whenever Western Europe and the UK and Northern Africa and that area is above normal, you'll see spikes of the global temperature. So what I believe has happened is you may have a very similar setup now with the oceans as he did, during these warm periods. Because, if you went to Penn State, the one thing we always looked at Penn State was what was going on in Europe. Because if we see Europe get real cold, we know, okay, the trough's going to try to come into the eastern part of the United States. If you see Europe get warm, we had a saying, ridge in Spain, warm up and rain. The models would be saying, oh, big snowstorms coming, not with that ridge centered over Western Europe like that. So looking back at those periods, you may have had a La Nina base state. What do I mean by a La Nina base state? It means that Asia, the Western Pacific, Western Europe are quite warm. This increases the easterlies in the Pacific Ocean. And if you look at what happens a lot of times when there are La Ninas going on, I'm not talking about the real strong ones, you'll see a lot of very warm weather in Western Europe, a lot of very warm weather in the eastern part of the United States. So just something I'm throwing out there just because of observation.
Well, one of the things that they say probably contributed to the depths of the Little Ice Age is the Maunder minimum, the really extended period
but
of
that's after the warm period.
Yeah,
that's after the warm period. So see, there's also the idea that the atmosphere will react different warm coming off a cold. Like if you look at the models this year, 7 out of we're in October now, 7 out of 10 of the months. If you look at the European the month before, it was out of touch on what was going to happen the following month. It would always turn out much cooler than what it had. I hadn't seen that happen. Usually the models, oh, they look warm, they're going to be warmer. That's been a different story this year. And I wonder if the drop off in global temperature and to some extent the water vapor that we see going on now as we come off Tonga and the strong El Nino a couple of years ago may be having some impact the other way. There's a fascinating winter coming up, folks. We've just had a major stratospheric warming event in September over the South Pole, and these are correlated with cold winters in the United States. They're also correlated, believe it or not, with a lack of hurricane activity to some degree. I was looking at this, I was going, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. I'm going to have to think about it now. Watching the South Pole in September.
Alrighty, I'm gonna pull up a question from a viewer that I have not seen in our chat before. He could have been in here before, but I like to try and get to the people who are new. So welcome Wayne Weidman, who says, who does the so-called global average temperature? Are the data and calculations open for public scrutiny? I'm wondering if they consistently use the same methods all the time.
Well, first of all, let me just say so before. It's a horrible metric. John Kerr has been yelling about this. God rest his soul. He said what we should be quantifying, if we want to quantify it, is wet bulb temperatures, better still, saturation mixing ratios, because they'll go right to the source. The source is how much water vapor there is, right? Rather than the global temperature. It does exist. I know there are people that say, well, it doesn't. It does, but what does it really mean? I think it's a third-rate metric as far as that goes. So someone else take it.
Well, the bottom line is that the data is available publicly. The calculations, not so much. Here's the problem. There's a black box that goes on at NOAA. Now, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, collects all of the data in the United States, but also collects all of the global data, and they produce something called the Global Historical Climatology Network, GHCN. Now, the problem that we've got is that they have published what we do to the data to adjust it and correct it, but we never get to see the code that goes on. There's a black box. And this black box basically is something that runs on their supercomputers. Well, it doesn't need to these days. Back when they first started doing it, yeah, you needed a supercomputer, but now you can run it on a desktop PC. The problem is we have never been able to test their code to see if, in fact, their code is doing it right. And what we have observed is that there seems to be a continuous warm bias associated with every adjustment that they do to the temperature data, from the raw temperature data up to the final published data that they distribute. Now, add to that there are several entities out there, such as NASA, CRU in the UK. We've got BEST in Berkeley. We have the Japan Meteorological Agency. All these different entities are taking this data and then adding their own secret sauce to it and then producing their own version of global temperature. None of them match. They are somewhat close at times, but they don't match. So what's the real temperature? I have no freaking idea, and neither do they.
And add to that, Anthony, what we've discovered in the last few years is that so much of the measured temperature data comes from stations that don't even exist anymore.
Yeah, but it's got to be
caught out publishing temperature data from no station at all. So has about 30% of some of the U.S. stations have either moved to new locations and they just pretend it's the same place, or they just don't exist anymore. They were closed.
Yeah, but it's got to be warming up. Look, you can't.
Joe, your camera's gone a bit wonky.
Tilt your monitor down. You're cut off.
Camera.
Yeah,
you're like Tim Allen's neighbor in Home Improvement over there.
Yeah. Listen, you can't run from the sea surface temperatures. You can't run from it. I mean, people, so we don't know if it's warming. Yes, it's warming up. It's warming up disproportionately, because if you look at the relationship saturation mixing ratios, you'll find that there is a correlation between water vapor and temperatures, and it's much, 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 much greater where it's cold. So the distribution of temperature is explained by the water vapor. The increase of water vapor, it can be explained by the increase in sea surface temperatures. So it comes down to what's actually warming the ocean. I refuse to believe that CO2 has any major impact that we can measure on the ocean temperature. Therefore, circle back to water vapor. Water vapor is the key. And look, I'm biased toward my professors. I'm biased toward the tropics. I'm biased to all these guys that came before, my dad, John Kerr, Bill Gray, all of them. So I realize what my bias is, but I'm going to speak it anyway. Oceans, 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 tropics, tropics, tropics. That's what I think where the shooting match is. And no one wants to quantify the water vapor. How about that? Well, let's measure CO2, but don't go quantifying the water vapor. I did a blog on CFACT, a little chit chat with Grok about water vapor. And I actually got him to admit, or whatever it is, that as a standalone, if you just say, just like these people want to make CO2 a standalone, if you make water vapor a standalone, then guess what? It's responsible for almost all the warming you've seen in the last 50 years. Someone's asking, is satellite data on ocean temperatures reliable? Yeah, much more reliable than air temperatures, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I want to get to this question by Brian Porter too, who asks, what happens with intensities of hurricanes when global temperatures eventually turn to a colder trending cycle?
They're going to be intense. Yeah, and if you can focus the energy more, if you can cool the northern and central Atlantic so you can just keep it nice and warm where they're supposed to be, that's why these storms were such monsters. That's why I'm so big on replacing this Saffir-Simpson scale with our power and impact scale, which has metrics for the size of hurricane force winds, how much 50-knot winds, 34-knot winds. You'll get the monsters back again, like we used to see in the good old days, where September 4th, 1933, the ultimate hurricane geek map, 2 majors hitting the United States on the same day. How about that? Can you imagine if that happened today?
It'd be terrible. Talking about two major hurricanes, though, David Vaught asks, or Voigt, one of those, asks, I quit paying attention the last week or so, but what happened to the 2 hurricanes that had potential to cross paths? Did they run into each other?
It was a sayonara effect instead of the Fujiwara effect. Umberto broke the ridge down to the east, and Imelda followed it out. But they did a lot of rearranging of prime beachfront, especially in the Carolinas, which is going to get rearranged even more this weekend with this non-name feature coming up.
Yeah, the waves have been pretty nuts on the beaches. It's been red flags for weeks up and down the beaches in South Carolina. Very, very, very happy that it was a sayonara effect because that they were eyeing me, and I was thinking about like, do I have to like wrap my chickens up in newspaper and put them in the car or something to take them away before I was getting ready to bug out. Let's see. Okay, here's a question from Hit Turbine who says, has anyone on the panel heard of the electrical theory of tornado generation and strength?
I've heard of it. Let's not discuss it because it's not real.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
let me just say something. I was over with Dr. Tim England, I guess it is, at Texas A&M, looking at his research, and I was just gawking at what I was seeing. They were showing focusing of lightning. Now, I don't know if this is the same thing, but when lightning focuses in one area, it's showing you where the tornado may show up. When it's spread out all over the place, tornadoes aren't showing up. I was absolutely mind boggled at sitting in this guy's office. Like a cumulus cloud goes over the weather station in College Station, and you see electrical charges coming out of that cumulus cloud. I mean, it's a sunny day. I'm like, what the heck is this stuff? Way above my pay grade, though, but I was fascinated with what I saw.
Yeah, well, when the lightning concentration is a symptom, not a driver. So anyway,
it's a symptom. But it still gives people advance notice. That's why cutting research to lightning, I think, no es muy bien.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, we've got this is kind of a personal question for Heartland from Montana Joe, who has watched us for a long time, who says, a few weeks ago, Google admitted it throttled channels that it didn't agree with. Have you asked them to remonetize the Heartland channels because of that admission?
Brief answer, yes.
They're probably still
Jim and
ignoring
Anthony
it.
are constantly asking them to remonetize.
Their brief answer is silence.
They allow you to rap on the door every 90 days, and so we let, as soon as the clock dings, we do it again.
Yeah, we had to reset the clock.
Anthony nailed it spot on.
Yep, we had to reset the clock a couple months ago because I held up a gun in front of the camera in the tank on Thursday a couple months ago. But that's because I was demonstrating something.
Wait, let me get mine. Yeah,
no, don't do it.
Smooth movement.
We just got the clock back. Okay.
Way to go.
It was for demonstration purposes only. It was not threatening. It was just forget it.
It wasn't
Did
loaded.
they not pay attention to the tip? It was painted orange. It was a Nerf gun. Okay.
For real.
Oh,
Yeah, definitely. It was
Anyway.
a Nerf gun. It was a Nerf gun that I was showing the firing pin in. But Chris Nesbitt asks, are long-term climate models any use at all? Could we save a lot? Whoop. Okay, what happened? Andy, I'm clicking.
I'm sorry. It was about me, and I got excited, and then it like overran my actual production. I'll drop out.
I got it.
Are long-term climate models any use at all? Could we save a lot of money by giving up on them?
Well, every climate model is predicting some sort of doom by 2100 or 2150 or 2200. Now, tell me if that's useful in your everyday life.
It's useful as far as, just interesting science computer tinkering goes, I think. But
yeah,
I constantly am told that the computer models are improving all the time, and yet the range of temperature is never shrinking. If they're getting better, then the range of predicted temperature should be narrowing in on a number, and yet they're not. They're always staying about like this, whether it goes up or down, the gap is about the same. And that tells me they're not very effective. I want weather models to tell me what's going on this week and next week. I don't want a climate model to tell me what 2100 will be like, because there's no way of knowing it all.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's all the time we have, you guys. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but we are right up on the half hour here. So I'm going to hand it back to Jim.
All right. Yes, thank you very much, Linnea, for the Q&A. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat. I was just mentioning in the private chat behind the scenes here, what a great and good audience that we have for the Climate Realism Show. Watching you guys interact in the chat and leaving us questions is so rewarding. So I'd reminder, bring more friends to watch this show live. It's a blast and you learn a lot. I'd like to thank our special guest today, Joe Bastardi, You can find more about him and learn more about him at weatherbell.com. And he also writes a Substack, I believe. Is that correct, Joe Bastardi? The American Storm.
I'm on Twitter as the American Storm. I blog on CFAC all the time when I don't get too rowdy.
Yeah, when they let you in there, when you calm down. Yeah. So yeah, that reminds me to actually thank our streaming partners, one of which is CFACT, which Joe Bastardi is affiliated with, plus junkscience.com, the CO2 Coalition, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and Heartland UK Europe. Thank you, Andy, for producing so wonderfully behind the scenes. And please visit climaterealism.com, climateataglance.com, and get your copy of Climate at a Glance 2nd edition at amazon.com. And always visit heartland.org, where you can subscribe to Sterling Burnett's Climate Change Weekly newsletter. Thank you all again for being here with us this week, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.